If you've enjoyed tonight's episode, please make sure you check out the episode description. You'll find links there on how you can learn more about this guest, links to connect with them on social media, and how to support the podcast. Remember, I don't get paid to do this. My boss is a bit tight-fisted, but I can say that. I work for myself. In short, this show really is all about the guest. If you've enjoyed their interview, please feel free to let them know. You can also tune in to the other podcast, Growth from Darkness, which is co-hosted by a lovely lady from Australia. We talk about what trauma responses are and healthy ways to move beyond the past. For more information, just go to growthfromdarkness.com. And as much as we all hate commercials, they are a necessary evil these days. That's what keeps the show on the air. You can also show your support by purchasing one of my many books or donating through PayPal or leaving a review on whatever platform you listen to this podcast on. You can find the links to the books or for donation options in the podcast description. And as always, a portion of the proceeds do go to local organizations that help fight human trafficking. Welcome back to the podcast. As always, I'm your host, Amanda Blackwood. I have an incredible guest with me today, guys. You're not going to believe this. I have a man who has overcome a lot in his past and has done so much with his life. He is Reverend Dr. James W. Smith, and my goodness, I cannot wait for his story. But in the meantime, welcome to the show.
Thank you, and glad to be with you today.
So whenever you introduce yourself to people, do you tell them that you're the Reverend Dr. James Smith?
Yes, I do, but I'm not into titles, so if they want to call me Reverend Smith, Dr. Smith, or just Smitty, or James, I'm okay.
I love that. You're so down. It totally makes sense with your life.
Mm-hmm.
So, I got to ask, my first question is usually always the same. Where are you originally from? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Lewisburg, North Carolina. It's about 30 miles north of Raleigh, the capital.
Oh, sounds like it's a beautiful area. I've been through North Carolina a couple times. Yeah. Nice. So tell me a little bit about your experience with what it is that you've been through. What kind of launched you into this path that you've been on now?
Well, let me give you a little of my background. I grew up in a small town outside of Lewisburg that was so small until when you enter it, you were leaving it. I also went to high school there in that little small village. And of course, I graduated, went off to college, then went to law school. I received my law school degree, JD, and I started practicing in my hometown. And of course, I was the uh, first and only African American lawyer practicing at that time in my hometown. And I was also the youngest African American lawyer practicing in the state of North Carolina.
Wow.
Got into gambling and lost my focus, committed a crime, uh, went to a mental hospital. From there, I accepted Christ in my life. And of course, I also accepted the ministry, the call to the ministry. After I preached my initial sermon on January, the first Sunday in January 1982, the following day, I went to court and pled guilty to armed bank robbery, got a 15-year sentence, spent 5 years in prison, got out in 1986, started my life all over again, went back to school, got my doctor, got my master's of divinity, and then my doctor of ministry, called to pastor for the last 32 years, and retired past December. And now I'm into podcasting, enjoying it. That's my life.
My word. What an insane journey you've had. Wow. Do you know? Was it the gambling that kind of pushed you down the road to the armed robbery?
Yes,
Yeah.
it was. I don't know. I got into it. Well, I knew gambling for basically all my life because I had an uncle who gambled, and so I was very familiar with it. But I had never played poker, and so I started playing poker with older professionals when I was practicing law. And at first, it was great. I won and I lost. I knew how to get up. Those things I knew when to fold, I knew when to hold. But then it got to the point where the love of the game kind of took over. And instead of me getting up, I stayed and played until almost the game was over. And I think what added to it is that I was playing with professionals, other lawyers, barbers, bondsmen. We had a little circle, and so nobody was worried about money. If you
Hmm.
needed to borrow $500, you got $500, and if I had it and they need to borrow from me, they got it. And because everybody knew that the next week, you know, they would get taken care of. And so
You're right.
I think that added to it too, because I never had to get up. I was just loving it. And so then I was losing, start losing at that point. And of course, if I knew anything, I lost all of the properties that I had accumulated. I lost my first wife of 5 years. My partners and I separated all because of my gambling. And of course, when I knew anything, that was it. I messed up. There's a long story behind it all, but I'm just trying to give it to you briefly, and then allow you time to ask any questions that you want to, so we can make this a good conversation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I do appreciate that. Your
Mm-hmm.
story is just fascinating. There's always redemption available too,
Mm-hmm.
especially through the route that you took. Do you
Mm-hmm.
remember that moment, that exact moment when you found God?
Yeah, well, I was always in church, so that wasn't new. My mother was a very dedicated Christian, so I went to church all the time. As a matter of fact, my mom was always in church, and I can remember gambling when I would try to rush home to make sure that I took my mom to church. So I knew about church, uh, but after my crime, and I went to they I was committed by the court to the mental hospital, which is Dorothy Dix Mental Hospital, that was in Raleigh at the time, for a 6 weeks observation. It was there that I began to kind of come to grips with what was going on in my life, asking questions about how to let myself get into this place. And my faith just kind of took over. And I just came to the conclusion that, all of that stuff that I was doing, it was over, the drinking, the gambling. And that was really the case. It was over. And when I got out and came back to Henderson, where I was practicing law, you know, they reduced my bond because my bond was $100,000 at that time. They reduced it to 10,000, and I got out. And during this whole time was just a different time for me. My whole perspective on life changed. I just was finished with all that crazy stuff that I was doing, and of course, during that time, which was about a 6 month period before I went back to court, I was going to church, going to Bible study, and I felt a call to the ministry. And of course, I went and talked to my pastor. And of course, didn't want to do my initial sermon as the Baptist denomination somewhat require an initial sermon of you. So, but I didn't want to do that until I got out, because I was okay. I knew I was going to get some time. I was prepared for it. I just wanted to go in and not get in any trouble, get out, because I knew that my life was going to be different because I had a made up mind. And so, but when I went to talk with my pastor, he told me, he said, well, if you feel a call, then why don't you go on and do your initial sermon now. You don't know what you have in store for in prison. You know, it may be that he wants you to work with inmates, what
Mm.
have you. And so I did. So I preached my initial sermon on that Sunday, first Sunday in January of 1982. Never will forget it. And the following Monday, I had to go to court, federal court in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and it was there where I pled guilty and received a 15-year sentence. At that time, you only had to serve uh, 1/3 of your sentence. If you had good behavior, and I knew I was going to have good behavior, so I knew I was getting out in 5 years, and that's what happened. And
Oh,
so
wow.
when I went in, I did exactly. I got a good job with the adult basic education. I worked in the chaplain's office, and as a result of that, I got lots of great privileges. I went out to Stallstown, Pennsylvania for a workshop with Prison Fellowship. I went back to D.C. And when I tell people this is hard to believe, but at that time, uh, when I went to D.C., they allowed me to fly out by myself and come back to the prison. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. And you still speak in prison settings, right?
Yeah, not as much as I used to. Uh, I I was doing quite a bit in the federal correction institution. I went out to Kansas. I've been all over. The I was on death row here in North Carolina, but but since I was pastoring, I had I you know it kind of not as often as it was before I started pastoring. And so now I'll go when I'm called, but I do lots of inspirational speaking, just sharing my story and just doing, encouraging, inspiring, and hopefully transforming messages. And I do that through my podcast. My podcast is entitled uh, uh, "Tell Us Your Story," and of course I am about encouraging, inspiring, and transforming, and so that's what I do basically now. And I workshops, seminars, and you name it. I've got a full line. I've got T-shirt lines, cap line, encouraging, inspiring, transforming, all of that. So enjoying it.
Very nice. You also have a great sense of style. I've got your photo pulled up right in front of me. Your bow tie perfectly matches your pocket square and it is sharp, man.
well,
You're looking good.
well, thank you so much. You're so kind.
But stories like yours are exactly why I decided to start doing what it is that I do. I know that we haven't had too much of an opportunity to talk beforehand, but I'm a survivor of human trafficking, and God saved me for a very special reason that I couldn't find for a very long time.
Oh wow.
And finding people like you who have been through the trenches also and have come out the other side, and you've learned to speak up and you talk about not just what you've been through, but what you've overcome and who you have become because God decided this is your path.
Hmm.
It's
That's
so
right.
important that we get those messages out there. There's so many people that are feeling lost.
Yes, I agree. I agree with you. You know, when I got out in 1986, I went to the halfway house, and of course, we had to get a job, and I went straight to the courthouse because that's what I did. And I saw a lawyer that I knew and asked for a job, and he told me to come by the office, and I got a job starting next week. So everything has worked out. Got applied
Wow.
for seminary, and the first semester that I applied, I didn't get accepted, but I didn't get discouraged because I knew why. I assumed they were wondering if I was very serious or what have you. And so the next semester I applied again and I got accepted. And,
Hmm.
so, you know, I never got discouraged along the line. I knew why things were happening to me. Uh, after I'd been with the out for a while and working as a paralegal in some church, I mean, in some law offices. I decided to apply as a sponsor of CLE, Continuing Legal Education, for the North Carolina State Bar. My license obviously had been disbarred. I had
Mhm.
been disbarred, but uh, I was talking with a lawyer in Henderson that who knew me well, and there was another lawyer who had gotten in some trouble of embezzling, and of course they allowed him to do CLE. So there was only one disbarred lawyer in the state of North Carolina that was doing continuing legal education. And so my lawyer friend said, I've read, his name is Jim Blackburn. He said, I've read Jim Blackburn's book, and your story is interesting too. Why don't you apply to sponsor CLE with the state bar? And so I think lawyers would love to hear your story and your sharing with them. Well, my situation was a violent one, so I just didn't feel as if I would, it would work for me. But when I came back, talked to my wife now, 32 years, well, 33 years this year,
Wow.
and she said to me, she said, "Well, honey, you don't have your license anyway, so what can you lose?" So I applied. I applied to the state bar, and they gave me an answer and told me that I should hear something from them within 2 weeks. And of course, 2 weeks passed on that Friday. I didn't get anything in the mail. So in my mind, I'm thinking that all they can see is an African American guy who robbed a bank, and that wasn't a really good picture. Okay,
Hmm.
so what I did, well, you say you have a picture of me, but I got dressed in a three-piece suit, put on my tie, I got a haircut. I had a haircut, and I said I'm going over to the state bar. I went over to the state bar, and the lady came down to talk with me, and I could tell from her expression that she was kind of shocked to see who she saw. And she said to me, she said, "Mrs. Smith," she said, "you should hear something from us within the next 2 to 3 days."
Wow.
Next 2 to 3 days, I got a letter saying that I had been approved as a sponsor of continuing legal education, ethics, and mental health. And so for 11 years, I just gave it up when COVID came in. For 11 years, I was one of two, the only African American disbarred. Uh, and there was one other person, Jim Blackburn, who was disbarred, who they allowed to sponsor CLE.
Oh my
That's,
gosh.
yep.
It's amazing. You dress for success and you don't give up and you
Mm-hmm.
show up and you get what it is that you're looking for. So many people wouldn't have ever made the effort to go down there. They would have just said, obviously, they don't want me. And they would have
Mm-hmm.
just given up.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I
I,
love that you didn't give up, James. That's
no.
amazing. And 33 years this year with your wife.
Yes. 33 years.
Congratulations. That's
Yeah.
amazing too.
July 21st. And it's interesting because we talk about it, we kind of laugh, and this is the truth. Uh, we knew we got married on July 21st, and I had never thought about it until maybe about maybe 10 years ago. And I said, "Honey, July 21st was the same day, July 21st, that I robbed the bank."
Oh my gosh.
I honestly, when we got married, I never thought about it. And, we never talked about it. It just never crossed my mind until I was just thinking. I said, "Oh, it was July 21st when this happened to me." You know.
My gosh. So the low
Uh,
point and the high point of your
oh
life are on
yeah,
the same
oh
day.
yeah, yeah. Same day. Interesting.
Man, how did you meet your wife?
Well, what happened? My wife husband was a minister, and he preached at the church, and he came home and had a heart attack. Left her with two kids. One was 5 at the time, and the other one was 10. And Uh, what what happened after he passed? The church that he was pastoring uh, was looking for another pastor, and they had called a pastor, but he couldn't get there until that next month. And so one of the Sundays in December, I never will forget, it was in December 1989. They called me over to render the service, and I saw her out there in the audience. And I got home and I called, just said, "How you doing?" And somehow, you know, it took off from there. And I was working with the law office in Warrenton, and one of the secretaries to the office knew her, and I said, I just asked some questions, and she, because at first I always thought I was this cool, you know, guy who could get any lady that I want. But now, I've got this record, so I'm a little bit more cautious to know if anybody would talk. And so she knew me. She said, "Well, Smith, do like you used to do. Just approach." And so I went to the floral shop and got a uh, roses carnation, I think it was at the time, and sent it to her at the school. She was working. She was a teacher, and she was teaching at the school. And I say, for information on who this may be, call Loretta. Loretta was the one who was at the law office with me. And so when she got off, she called Loretta and came by the office to see. And Loretta said, "Well, there he is. He's right over there." And somehow that's how we started talking.
You are slick, mister. Do you still give her
Yeah.
carnations once in a while?
Oh yeah. 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 We have a very good relationship. Yeah. Very good.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
The
Oh, that's
the
beautiful.
yeah, the kids are great. She had two kids, and one, like I said, one was five, and they're all grown now.
Yeah,
They're
you had to
good in
practically
school.
help raise them, right?
Oh
Right?
yeah, oh yeah, they're my kids, and they acknowledge it.
Yeah,
They're my kids. Yeah.
that's neat.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. And your book, Deal by Me,
Mm-hmm.
do you happen to have a copy of that handy? Have you got a portion of it you'd like to read for the audience? If not, that's okay too.
Oh yeah, I think I got them in the car. Uh, I think I've got yeah, they're in the car because I keep them with me. People always ask me for a copy when they see me. Uh,
Oh, wow.
but uh, but I know some of the things that I talk about in the second book.
Oh,
I can share with you.
yeah.
The second one, the first book I wrote was "Deal by Me," uh, a golden opportunity blown, and that was based on my blowing my law practice. So it kind of correlates. The deal by me symbolizes my gambling and my saying, "I don't want the next hand." Okay, I hope you can feel that.
Mm.
And so then I wrote my second book, Doing the COVID. And that book was based upon a self evaluation. It's entitled Deal by Me, second edition, a self evaluation, where I actually share things that I learned from what I went through. And of course, there are some things that I talk about in this book, and I share things like, common things that we hear all the time, like the darkest hours, just before dawn. Talk about confronting the source. You know, an idle mind is the devil's workshop. You know,
Yes.
play with fire and you get burned. And all
Yeah.
of it relates to where I was going for. Accept responsibility. And of course, I talk about don't let your circumstance be an excuse. And of course, I share, how don't be afraid to fail. And that particular one I was really interested in because uh, while I was being out, I was still going different places talking. So I contacted a a, s- a s- a place in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, which was a, I guess, rehabilitation center for compulsive gamblers. It's kind of like, the people who have alcoholics,
Hmm.
go for And so when I called over there, I told them I'd like to come over and talk with the guys. I had been gambling and I knew a little bit about it. And he asked me if I was still a gambler. And I just told him, I said, no, I don't gamble anymore. I mean, I'm finished with it. And he said to me, well, I'm not sure if the guys and ladies would appreciate you coming over talking with them because we believe that once a gambler, always a gambler. Same concept with alcohol. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Okay.
Right.
And I told him, I said, "Well, I'm sorry, but I know I'm not a gambler anymore. Period. I just don't gamble." And so from that point, I started thinking about it. And when I was doing my book, the last one, doing the COVID period, during this 3 year COVID time, I started thinking about that, and I came to realize in my self evaluation that I may not have been a compulsive gambler. That I think my problem was more that I was afraid to fail. I had been this outstanding lawyer, and everybody was saying it about me who knew me. I knew I was a good lawyer, not boasting, but I tried some big cases, rape cases. I've had them, uh, and I was this first and only African American lawyer to practice in my hometown. I was the youngest at age 26 African American lawyer practicing in the state of North Carolina at the time. And I had kind of this big head, and so now I'm getting ready. I've lost everything, and I'm going to the bottom. And I think my thought was that if I could get enough money to just take care of my debts, I could just pay off everything, and I could just get started over again like nothing would happen. Now that's silly talk, but I'm just telling you how I
Yeah.
thought I was thinking at that time. So I came to the conclusion that I may not have been a compulsive gambler, but I was probably afraid to fail.
Right. I can hear a little bit of that in there. You created big shoes to fill.
Yes, yes, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a rough road to walk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Everybody's expecting big things from you, including yourself at that point.
yeah, exactly. I agree.
Yeah. Man. So where would people go if they want to grab your books?
Well, they can go to my website. Uh, that's www.dealbyme.com, where they can get a book. And there is no shipping fee. I send it out that autographed copy of any of my books. And the first one is Deal by Me, Golden Opportunity to Blow. In between, I wrote another one which dealt with church conflict because I got, and I haven't shared everything with you, but I also was appointed as moderators to the General Baptist State Convention because of my legal background, and
Wow.
they wanted me to work with churches that had conflict, and so I wrote a book on that entitled Come, Let Us Reason Together." That's in there. And then my last book that I wrote during the COVID period is the second edition of Deal by Me, a self evaluation. And they're all on my website. I've got cap, I've got a t shirt that's engraved, encouraging, inspiring, transforming, and my logo, Deal by Me, is in the T-shirt. All of that's on my website. Pricing is on the website. Now the books can also be purchased from Amazon.com, and of course any other bookstore. Once you ask, they may have to request it, but
Yeah.
you can get them.
But the ones on Amazon aren't signed. I want to signed ones.
Okay. Well, I'll sign them for you. All you got to do is just go to the website and pick it up. And I also do workshops on my website, and also am available contact for speaking engagements. Do a lot of inspirational speaking. So that's my life, enjoying it.
Absolutely. And 33 years married to a wonderful woman.
Exactly, exactly.
Oh my gosh, you are incredible. Um, so there's always two last questions that I like to ask people. And the first one is, how do you celebrate your wins in life? When something goes well, when you accomplish something new, how do you celebrate?
By just giving thanks.
That's
I'm
beautiful.
I'm just grateful.
Yeah.
I don't ask for a lot now. I just thank God for what I do have and for blessing me each and every day.
Yeah.
And I don't think I I don't need a whole lot. I just felt His blessings. I'm fortunate. I have good friends. Even my former partners, we get together every once in a while. My best friend, even when I was practicing law, is still one of my best friends. We eat, so life is just good.
Wow. That's beautiful. And what is one thing that you love about yourself that's not related to your physical appearance?
I think I am considerate. I think I'm very humble, and that came as a result of what I went through.
Yeah.
If I can give you one illustration about the humility, and that that area is in my book also, the last book. Um, when I got out of the uh, when I got out of mental hospital, went back to Henderson where I was practicing law. I didn't have a job. I knew I couldn't go back to my law office, and so I had my friend who had a service station allowed me to work at his service station because I needed to make some money, help my mom who was at the house. Um, and I pumped gas and I washed windshields. Later, after about a month or two, I got another job at a supermarket in Henderson, and this was before Food Line, Kroger, and all the other major supermarkets that we know of now. It was called Safeway, and everybody came to Safeway to shop. And I got the job because I was into politics. He knew me. I ran for district court judge in '76, and if the law had been like it is now, I would have been the first elected African American district court judge.
Wow.
Um, but I lost in the primary. Well, I won the primary with 47% of the vote. See, now all you have to get is 40. But in the runoff, you had to get a 50%, and that's when I lost.
Mm,
So the gentleman who ran the Sayway knew me well because he was chairman of the county commission, so he just gave me a job. But the job that I had was behind the cash register, bagging groceries. And so clients of mine, family members, friends, everybody shopped here. Same thing for the service station. And I would walk their groceries to the car with them. They talk, you know. That taught me humility. It was like, wow, I used to be thought I was all this and that,
mm,
and now I'm walking groceries to the car with my former clients,
yeah.
or I'm washing the windshields or pumping gas in in the cars of my former client. That's that humility standpoint. So I feel that I possess that quite, that's something that sticks with me.
Yeah. You had to swallow your pride to get the job done.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's not an easy thing to do.
Hmm.
Wow. You have had an incredible journey, and I know without a doubt that you have inspired so many people to turn their own lives around. Has anybody ever come to you and specifically said, because of you, my life is different?
Oh, sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was. that was almost for 32 years pastoring the same church.
Yeah.
And they and I never hid anything. You know, when I was first called, I laid my total background out, and they have a very large church on Sundays, on average about 100 members in service. On membership roll, about 200. But you know, I got that all the time. Reverend Smith, you don't know what you have done for me. You know,
Yeah.
when you preach, I see where you come from, and I just feel it. You know, yes, I get it all the time.
If you've enjoyed tonight's episode, please make sure you check out the episode description. You'll find links there on how you can learn more about this guest, links to connect with them on social media, and how to support the podcast. Remember, I don't get paid to do this. My boss is a bit tight-fisted, but I can say that. I work for myself. In short, this show really is all about the guest. If you've enjoyed their interview, please feel free to let them know. You can also tune in to the other podcast, Growth from Darkness, which is co-hosted by a lovely lady from Australia. We talk about what trauma responses are and healthy ways to move beyond the past. For more information, just go to growthfromdarkness.com.